Good morning, friends and family. Here we are again, faced with issues of tremendous proportions. The most important of which right now is the murder of that young man. And yes, it was murder. We all saw him murdered right in front of our eyes by an arrogant individual wearing a uniform who looked at us as if we didn't belong, as he continued for 8 or 9 minutes to squeeze the life out of this young man. A thing that's been happening too often. However, I believe that in some instances, we're actually focusing on the wrong issue. We're focusing on racism. Yeah, there are problems with racism. But look at the marches. Look at the mixture of people who are out there marching. They're from all races and all walks of life. They're young, they're old. They're putting their own lives at risk to go out and represent what they see to make a difference. And we've done this for quite some time, and sometimes it's been effective. But more often than not, I believe that it's not been as effective as we would like it to be. So what do? We march, we get locked up. The bad people amongst us loot and carry on. We don't need those people amongst us. So if we're out looting, if we're out marching for a cause, the first person you see throw a brick or a rock or attempt to break into a store, there's enough of you to put him out of his misery. And I trust you that you will do so in a nice, careful way where you will not be prosecuted because you won't have harmed him. You would have stopped him in his track and maybe put him to sleep for a little while. We make the same mistake every time. We protest in our neighborhoods. We loot in our neighborhoods when the problem is not in our neighborhood. Don't burn down CVS. Don't burn down the corner store. Don't loot. That's horrible. And I know it's not the people that have gone out there with good intentions. It's the miscreants in society, the opportunists, the scoundrels, who see an opportunity to do what they're most likely to do given the opportunity. And that is ravage and plunder. Can't help themselves because innately they have a mob mentality, and innately they feel that they're entitled to what a person has worked so very, very hard to build. And in a matter of minutes, it's all destroyed. It was bad enough that these people had to close because of COVID-19. And now you go and destroy their business? What kind of animals are you? Really? What kind of animals are you? What does it take for you to see that that is wrong? Mob mentality or not, it's patently wrong. So going forward, that's one of the issues we're going to have to address. But more importantly, since we know it's not racism that's just running rampant through the country, then we need to go to the sources and correct the problem at the root. So, for example, one of my favorite words in the vocabulary is vulnerability. I had to use that back in 1990. I reported to a fella. We eventually became friends, who decided that it was my turn on his totem pole to be treated badly. And I endured it for about 2 months. Then finally, walked into his office and asked him the question, do you know about vulnerability? And he looked at me. And I said, I know where you park your car. You park it in a certain school against a fence. And most of the times you're the last person to get there. Understand that. I also reminded him that I knew where he lived. I also reminded him that I knew the face and features of his family. Big vulnerability. That's just an example of how I solved my problem. You didn't need to do any more. These individual police officers or racists who choose to take the lives of black men, white men, Chinese men unjustly without cause, or choose, like they did in Atlanta this weekend, to tase these 2 young women who were simply driving, break the window of their car and tase them. If all of these people who are truly bad individuals understood the concept of vulnerability, which means, listen, you have the God complex out here now. You believe because you have a badge on and a gun and you're a bully and you can take my life and have no one to back me up, that it's okay. Surprise, it's not okay. You have a family. You have sons. You have daughters. You have a wife. You have an extended family. And if we, the American people, make it clear one way or the other that if you come out and choose to abuse an innocent individual, kill an innocent individual, there will be severe consequences. We might not start with you because we would love you to watch and endure the pain. But if you knew for a fact, and I'm not advocating violence, I'm just advocating what's right, you want to see it as violence, that's up to you. We have a problem that must be solved and must be solved quickly. No more talking. So, if these bad officers, if these racists, individuals realize that, guess what? If I go out today and I decide to shoot an innocent individual, color doesn't matter, that in the immediate future, I'm going to pay. You see that son I loved so much? He's not going to come home. That daughter I love so much, nasty things could happen to her. That wife I adore, oh God, I'm going to be sent videos of what these people did to her. And last but not least, you, the individual who had the unmitigated gall to put your knee in a man's neck for 8-9 minutes and watch him die. I watched your chest get bigger and bigger as he begged for his life. And you snuffed his life out. And then you got up and you walked away proudly. But in my system of things that I'm suggesting, and I'm not suggesting violence, it's just a methodology. My lawyer told me once, said, young man, if you're looking for a rule interpretation, you go to court. If you're looking for justice, you come up with a plan, a foolproof plan that can be executed effectively and efficiently to solve your problem. Never raise a problem if you don't have a solution. Have a solution. This is my solution. And trust me, I have friends who are police officers. All policemen are not bad. I would like to believe that the vast majority of them are good. It gets extremely difficult, however, to believe that when only about 3 weeks ago, I had 5 squad cars pulled down on me in the Lowe's parking lot with guns aimed at me because a woman who I had a terse conversation with about a mask called and said I threatened her. Can you imagine that? And I had 5 squad cars pulled down on me in the parking lot. And I had one particular police officer pointing his gun directly at me. It was the first time I ever looked into the barrel, if that's what it's called, of a gun. Without even stopping by the Lowe's store to figure out whether or not that was true. So that could have been me. That could be anyone. And that's why we have to ascertain that the next time a cop reaches for his holster, reaches to pull his gun out, he understands that, guess what? This comes with a cost. And that cost comes through vulnerability. I have often had reason to remind people who are in power that you're here in the building now. You might be the president, vice president, general counsel, head of enforcement, head of the SEC, to remind them that you are vulnerable. You're just flesh and blood like myself. And since I don't walk in fear, since I walk close to God, I don't have to worry. Fear is not a part of my vocabulary. And I never have to leave my house. And I never have to pick up my phone to have you understand how vulnerable you are. Just think about what I'm telling you. Your kid goes to school. You get a picture of him. And the picture shows that this picture was taken today in school. Suddenly you're not that tough guy anymore. But your kid comes home that day because he's not the one at fault. So we're going to show you compassion. And we'll study your movements maybe and your attitude. And if your attitude doesn't change the next day, if you're not contrite, if you don't show visible concern, if you can't convince us that this was an accident, that it was deliberate murder or deliberate abuse, we're not going to make it that easy on you. America should not make it that easy on you where you sit back and know that you're the primary target. No, we want you to understand that the primary target is going to be every single person that you love, every single person that's close to you. That's where the pain gets deep. And when you're at your weakest and you're crawling like the sniveling piece of garbage that you are, maybe the American people will mercifully put you out of your misery. Usually they don't have to wait that long because men like you typically are very, very weak to the point where they commit suicide. Why do you think so many cops commit suicide? Because they have been involved in very bad things and they can't tell anyone and it eats them up. Eats them up. Or their partner does something very bad every day, every other week. And because they don't want to be called a snitch, because they don't want to be ostracized, and more importantly, they don't want to be killed by their fellow officers, they try to live with it. But the good men can't live with it. And because they're not walking close to God to find the strength, guess what? They take their own lives. Something which they had no right to do. Like these individual officers and individual bad people, they're not gods. God was the one who breathed life into us. Who are they to take that away from us? So all I'm saying, very simple. And I'm going to replay this over and over again. They need to understand that they are vulnerable. Whichever way you choose to go about it, that's up to you. I'm a Libra, so I like to have things balanced. So I like to have the punishment fit the crime and the punishment balanced. And this is not the ravings of somebody who is angry. No. This is a communication between someone who've had a similar thing, or could have been a victim. No. It's someone who said, guess what? As they said in the movies, we've had enough and we're not going to take it anymore. You're supposed to be protecting us. We pay your salaries and we're paying you to kill us? That's madness. It's madness. And I also suggest that the head of any precinct that has an individual who unjustly kills or unjustly abuses another human being, the head of that precinct should be terminated immediately. Why? Government, private practice has a way of saying if you're in charge. You should have known. You could have known, because they hold you responsible. So therefore, instead of trying to figure out a way to push the situation under the rug, have them understand that when this happens by any member from your precinct, we're just going to fire you. New York, New Jersey, a lot of states are at-will states where we can fire you without having to even give you a reason, as long as it's not because of some kind of bias. So we have the ball. Let's take away the bat from them. Let's take away the bat from them. I'm going to go out in my house now because I have some business to do. And I'll tell you that the first police officer that I see today, I'm going to have a conversation with him to save his life. Walk over to him and say, do you have a second? You might say yes, he might say no. Most of the times they feel so godly that they'll say yes. And I'm going to tell them about vulnerability and this movement to have them understand vulnerability. This movement to have them understand they're not gods. They're not the executioners, and that they work for us. Having said that, when I talk to you again, I will tell you about his response. In fact, I'm going to try to record the response. I'll tell him I'm doing a psychological study because of all the issues that we're facing now, and see what his response is. Maybe I'll ask him if I can come talk to his precinct to have them understand that they're alienating themselves from the public. And we don't want the good men, the multitudes of good officers, tainted by these individuals. We're going to weed them out. We're going to show them that we're going to weed them out. And it's not with anger. We're not angry. I'm not angry. I'm being philosophical and logical about this. If a problem persists, you do something about it. I remember way back in time when you went to India, there were a lot of men with one arm. You know why? They were pickpockets. And when they were caught, their arms were immediately severed, the arm that they used. So not only could they not use that arm anymore, but everybody knew you were a pickpocket. Because of human rights, we don't go that far anymore. And people say you shouldn't fight fire with fire, but I'll tell you something. When I get up in the mornings and I'm getting ready to leave my house, as I told those cops who 5 squad cars that surrounded me, I leave my house with 3 people. I leave my house with God on my forehead, who says to me, Rich, remember you're walking close to me. On one shoulder is Dr. Martin Luther King, who says, Rich, nonviolence, nonviolence. And I'm basically a very, very nonviolent person. And on the other shoulder, I have Malcolm X saying, by any means necessary. That's where we are today. We have to have the police officers all throughout America. Small towns, big towns, little cities. Understand, we're not going to march anymore. We're not going to wait for the government to do anything. We know what they do. Absolutely nothing. And there's one more important person that should be placed in this category. Anyone who incites racism, anyone who incites violence against a particular race, against a particular party, or anything like that, should very, very vehemently understand not all your family is protected. And so what if they are? The American people might not care less because they've had enough and we're just not going to take it anymore. I'm not a supporter of violence. I live a peaceful, clean life. But when you see these things happening routinely and you see some of the results, but I don't even care about the results because this guy's going to be sent down now to some prison where they'll put him in solitary confinement where he's basically protected. So the fellas inside really can't get to him. And the COs will do everything in their power to protect him for a while. But everybody has a price. And usually, if you can find the right price for the right CO, he'll be mistakenly left in general population just long enough. Just long enough. I hope he's watching this, because his days are very numbered. I hope my fellas who are locked up for life for the heinous crimes that they committed realize that they can somehow redeem themselves. I don't advocate violence. I advocate solution, equality, peace, love, and harmony. But we just can't take it anymore. We can't just talk about it. So now, that's my solution, the concept of vulnerability. Whoever else wants to use it, that's up to them. I'm not telling them to do that. But America, review it. Engage in dialogue with your precinct. Even if it's the community board, engage in dialogue with your precinct. I'm going to engage in dialogue with my precinct. In fact, you know what? I'm not even going to talk to the first police officer I see. I just had an epiphany. I'm going to schedule a meeting with the head of my precinct. And I'm going to suggest that as many officers as he has that can be present, ask them to be present. And I'm not going with anybody else. I'll go by myself. 6'4", 237 pounds, broad shoulders. As Mr. T would say, I pity the fool. So what I'll do is I'll schedule a meeting and I'll go down there. Trust me, I'll have that meeting before the end of the week. These cops over here have very little to do. And I'll ask them if I can record the meeting. They'll probably say no. But in New Jersey, I believe I have to research this. I believe. I could be wrong. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. As long as one party in the room consents to it, it's fine. Folks, be vigilant. Brothers, be careful. Sisters, be careful. My white brothers and sisters, be careful. I love you all. Don't let someone take your rights away from you or your life away from you. So if you get into a situation, be calm, be respectful, so that you can possibly walk away from that situation. Having said that, have a blessed day, and we'll talk again.